Hey, decision makers. Want to stay in the loop with exclusive content and the opportunity to be on the show? Text DECIDE to 218-432-9722 now, and let's get connected today.
AI isn't going to replace people. People that use AI will replace those that don't. Money is actually a tool. Once you learn how to invest it, we are not afraid to use it. Take the space that you're in, whether large or small, and make what you want out of it. I see and I create from what I see in my mind. Create what you want to create out of your life.
Welcome to the Just a Decision podcast, where we speak to our guests about the decisions they made in life, the good, the bad, their regrets, the decisions they're currently making, and the decisions they're gonna make for the future. Subscribe, like, comment on the video, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. And remember, we're available on all streaming platforms. Today, we got my boy, Edgar Irizarry. How you doing, Edgar?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm
Thanks
glad
for having me.
Came down, took that trip from New York, and how was Thanksgiving?
I need to do some working out after that.
Okay. Oh,
I came across some bacon mac and cheese, and I'm talking about the authentic kind. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was gonna have a plate, and I ended up having 3 plates. And I'm still kind of feeling a little bloated, but here I am, man. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, thanks for the invite.
Cool. You might have to do like a juice fast this week.
Sure.
Cool. So I asked 2 questions to everybody. It's sort of like these nervous questions. First question is, what's your favorite dish, and from where?
Oh, it sounds like an easy question.
Yeah.
It's not, because I eat a lot.
Okay.
Favorite dish, I'm gonna have to say, I don't know if I want to say this, but it's kind of black and white. As a child, has always been rice.
Okay.
Rice and like chicken,
Mm-hmm.
really basic. But now I think as I've gotten older, it's still rice and chicken.
Okay.
But like different, I like different kind of cuisines.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'd say like I go to the Chinese spot like Sichuan. I love Sichuan food.
Okay.
Which is like a slight spice.
Okay.
So like some kind of meat with rice.
Okay.
And that's it.
Cool.
But it can vary.
All right. Yellow rice or white rice?
I'm a white rice guy.
Now the question is, do you put ketchup on your white rice?
Never.
Okay.
Never. You don't do that, folks. If you are a ketchup person, don't do that.
Yeah.
My brother does it, and I hate it.
And then that meal, where's the best place you ever had that?
You can't do that to me.
Okay, sounds good.
It seemed like it was yesterday, depending how hungry I am.
Okay.
Yesterday I was really hungry, and I had some leftovers, and that was like the best thing I've had.
Cool. Someone comes up to you with a blank check, and they say, Edgar, whatever number you want to write on this, it's going to cash tomorrow. And your checking's not your savings. What's the first thing you're going to buy?
This actually happened to me. So one of my advisors, when I first started like doing work in South Africa, just helping people through my business Ago, there's something called a donor advised fund. Look into that. It's kind of like an actual resource.
Okay.
If you don't want to have investors, I won't make this too lengthy. Donor advised fund is an opportunity where people that are really wealthy use this as tax deductibles by investing in organizations or startups that are doing impactful things. And they have sustainable models. So my advisor wrote me a check for $5,000 once. Wow. And she says like, I believe in what you guys are doing, and I want to just give you this gift. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm really good with my personal finances. So I know I'm going to really stretch this, and I promise I'm going to multiply it. And actually, I learned really quickly that I would never write a check for someone, a blank check, because even if you think you're good with your personal finances, your business finances are completely different. So they wrote the check to me, and I went ahead hiring talent on Upwork and all these things. And like within like a month and a half, I was like, yo, this is zero, and I still have no return. So I don't write anyone a blank check. Let them show you what they can do, and then write them a check, maybe a small check that you know they're going to waste because they are if they have no experience. And then, yeah. So to answer your question, you can write me a check now, and I will probably see what's working and do more of that. So maybe invest in more marketing.
Okay.
For like what I'm building.
Nice.
But yeah. Anyway, that's the lengthy response. But
yeah, that's cool, man. Any information is better than no information. Well, I would say What's something that you've been eyeing that for you personally?
I think at this age, I like playing. I don't like playing, but I like the markets.
Okay.
I feel like I'm young and I'm like, hey, right now is the time to build. So I'd probably use a check. You write me a check for if I can write a number. Hey, give me 10 million and I'm putting that in the markets and maybe investing across different assets.
Nice.
Asset classes. And I'm definitely going to make that, bring some good return for that so that I can buy the things that I want, which are like maybe take wild trips and buy properties around the world.
That's what I like that one.
And I'm also like investing in the community. I love building and I love helping people build. It's kind of my most fulfilling thing.
Cool. Well, I thank you for that. So let's again, we're going to be talking about the decisions you made in life. I want to go back to one of the earliest memories of Edgar. So what was little Edgar like growing up?
Little Edgar growing up. I hate that this is the first thing that comes to mind, but they would force me to eat things I didn't want to eat.
Okay, I think that's everybody.
And I would go into this coat closet we had, and I would throw up in the corner and then leave.
Wow.
Didn't want to share that, but that's honestly what came to mind at first. So I would say I was like a respectful kid, but I was a sneaky kid.
Okay.
And then I've always, now that I think about it, I've always loved building like with my neighbors and friends. I've always loved having family over. And so I think I never thought of this until today, but I've probably been a community builder since I was a kid. Like I would bring all the kids in my neighborhood together to ride my little bikes and everyone would be jumping on different parts of it. And I'd be like trying to ride them all and falling, but I wanted everyone to be a part of it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'd say. I've always loved people. I get energy from being around different people. And I love when people like something lights up in them just because like we create the atmosphere, I believe.
Yeah.
And so when I'm in a space, I'm not narcissistic, but I do believe I have the possibility or potential to bring life to people. And so by being in a room, hey, I can change the atmosphere. And I believe I didn't know that at the time as a kid, but I've always loved bringing joy to people. And so that's what I would probably say. I remember myself always smiling and under the shelves or the curtains and the what do you call those store racks at Ross?
Okay.
Every Tuesday, playing hide and seek and getting in trouble.
Cool. So like I can confirm that you always been like the spark. Even this morning, you just talking, yo, I like this. Your motivation is like, I didn't realize I was good at that. But then your validation is like, oh, Edgar said this, so now I can keep on going. Or again, that spark of, let me start this rather than just thinking about it.
Man, that's good. Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm still learning as well. This isn't me being here, sitting on this chair, essentially saying, hey, I have it all together. There's a lot of things I'm still figuring out. But in certain areas, I feel, man, the one thing I can say, I told my brother this yesterday. We were talking, we had these deep life conversations when we play chess. It's one of my favorite games. Okay. And like, we'll stop in the middle of like me taking a move or him making a move. And we end up saying like something deep comes out of it because chess is a life game. And we were talking about someone we knew and like, hey, have you checked on this person? And he's like, yeah, but that person hasn't responded. I was like, I think we need to really check on them because they always tell me they're good. But as men, we do that. Yeah. I always say I'm good.
I'm all right.
And I'm learning that like, and I'm learning with there's people in my life that really care about me, whether I'm in a good situation or bad, and I'm not a burden to them by sharing. And that like, I need to be more vulnerable with those people. And one thing that we got out this conversation to bring it back to what you're saying, my brother and I, as we were talking, I was telling him like, hey, one thing I've learned is that like, just because it looks good, as men, sometimes we're so like practical and one-track minded, and that we kind of miss the essence of us being ourselves. And there's certain things that seem right in the external, but they're not actually things that our heart wants. And so just because everyone has their investment portfolio ready for the next 30 years, they have retirement ready, they have their property, and they're setting themselves up financially. Sometimes, and they have now the girlfriend, they're doing the fiance thing, or vice versa. If you're a woman, sometimes that's not actually what brings you fulfillment. Sometimes you just want to go and travel the world and have that kind of freedom to do that. And so to your point, if you're satisfied with yourself it makes it very easy to celebrate other people. And, back to what I was saying, hey, I want to be a light in the room. I want people to like know that there's potential in them. I want them to see possibility when they're around me.
Yeah.
Because that's what I see in myself. And it's that over cliched saying, how can you pour from an empty cup? But, the goal is that I'm always on overflow. And so if I'm always in overflow in everything that I do, that is going to be the energy I exude into the world, because that's who I am inside. And my favorite quote is by Yogi Bhajan. And it says, if you're willing to look at another person's behavior toward you as a reflection of the state of themselves, of who they are, rather than a statement about your value as a person, over a period of time, you will cease to react at all. So like pretty much whenever someone treats me a certain way, it's been really like confirmation. Instead of me overreacting and feeling insecure, it always reminds me, hey, like maybe they're really struggling with something, and maybe they're around me or someone else, and this is a reminder of something that they want to aspire to emulate or build up to. And so that quote always reminds me and makes me feel secure and knowing that, like, hey, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
The way you treat yourself, the way you're treating me, I decide to treat you well because I treat myself well.
I love when that word decide pops up.
It's just my decision to make sure I treat you well because I'm pouring into myself.
Yeah. One thing you said during that was you started with when you asked somebody, are you good? I've learned are you good is, we was talking about this before, it's too vague. So if I'm checking on someone, I'll say, what do you need? Because everybody needs something, whether it's the smallest thing or biggest thing, and let me allow me to help you see what you need. So it's like, are you good? I don't know. Because a lot of people don't know if you're good, bad. But that question, what do you need? Someone knows already what they need. Preteen Edgar. What was preteen Edgar like? Because I know you said when you were younger, you like building communities.
Well, unintentionally. I didn't really know I liked building communities.
Okay.
I was just living a youthful life. I'd say high school, I really struggled through high school. I say I hated high school. Those were the years I never really enjoyed. One, because I didn't really know myself, like most teenagers. I can only speak for myself. And two, I really struggled with wanting something, but really afraid of peer pressure, in the sense that like bullying and those kind of things that did happen in school. And so like just always trying to make sure I fit in. And so even though I kind of wanted to learn and stuff, I felt like if I learned, I'd get like cracked on, like he's a nerd. I never wanted to be considered a nerd, but I never really found myself, and I was trying to live on the edge for people, essentially like my peers.
Yeah.
And I think like high school was really, really tough for me. And then I was experiencing bullying. And so my parents put me in boxing, and that's when I started learning how to box. And then I had to learn how to defend myself. I was getting bullied I went to a school called Triton in Runnymede for a little while. And, like the male football team, I was wearing like a Nietzsche and Rockwear back then, and people were wearing like skateboarding clothes. And so they knew like I wasn't actually part of their crew.
Yeah.
And they were really treating me like, really bad, like pushing me around and stuff. And one day I was like, man, I need to learn how to fight.
Yeah.
So I went and started boxing. And one day I defended myself, and without knowing, I've never had a record. I've never done anything really wrong. The kid came into the classroom, and he started like messing with me, and I got up and punched him in the face in chemistry class. And the science teacher came and picked me up. I was skinny like I am now, and threw me out of the class, and they called the cops.
Wow.
So they called the cops on me. And the school, when they took me to the office, apparently his eye didn't open up. I'm not sharing violence on this podcast, but wait, I will share
life experiences.
He took me to the principal's office, and the principal was like, he was just treating me like, I don't want to say on the podcast, but it was terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
He was treating me like inhumane, honestly. And I'm not here to be a victim. I'm going to bring it home. Long story short, they tried pressing charges on a guy like me. And this is something about a decision that I'll share. It turned out that the principal, the kid that was bullying me, we had documents that my parents and family have called like 5 or 6 times prior to this happening, saying, hey, my son's being bullied. We have to do something. And the principal was really close friends with the family of this kid. And so they never wanted to take action to do anything. And they wanted to press charges on me because they were like family friends. And my parents, because they didn't know any better, and I was the one of 3 Puerto Ricans in that school, not using the race card. Race card doesn't have anything to do with this, but the background of not knowing, because my parents didn't know, they were terrified. I was terrified. I'm like, I never even had detention in my life, and they were talking about pressing charges on me.
Yeah.
And we went in front of like superintendents and stuff, and my cousin who worked in the courts, when we told her this story, she said, did you document this? And she's like, there's no way they could ever press charges on you. It's the bully law. And so because my cousin worked in the courts and she was knowledgeable in areas my parents weren't, and I was a kid, what did I know?
Yeah.
I was just like praying to God, like, God, I never did anything. I don't even know how I'm going to survive in any kind of like detention center if that's the case. We ended up finding out, and like the school district got in big trouble. They ended up firing the principal because there were numerous cases like this. And that kid, yes, they were like really close friends, his family. And because my cousin prevented what she did, nothing happened to me. It was a bully law. I was protecting myself. But I'm saying that to say, I think my adolescent years, yes, were not my favorite years. I loved from college onwards because I felt like it was all about me. Those years, I felt like I was trying to put on an image, not to get bullied, not to be in a space, not to be like, not knowing who I was. And because I didn't know, ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance isn't bliss. It's actually a big mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to not know. My cousin knew, and she prevented me and my family from getting in like trouble that we should have never been in. And so I never really enjoyed my teenage years. I was dying to get out of high school. I had a lot of issues with different people.
Yeah.
Because I was like a calm kid, and people like to
pick.
So.
Yeah. One thing I never understood bullying, and it's just, to me, is like, what does someone gain out of making fun, pick on? It's just, I never understood that. But when you said about fighting, my dad, when at a younger age, told me there's 3 rules to fighting. First rule is, yo, stop. What are you doing? Stop doing this. Stop. Second is tell someone, yo, this guy's doing it, or this girl's doing it. 3 is try to get away. If you did those 3 rules, you give that person everything he asked for, and you're going to be good because you followed my 3 rules. You in a classroom. Ain't nowhere else to go. You can't run. It's documented. You told the teachers, sorry, you asked for this. And now it sucks that the court almost got involved. And imagine if they did press charges and those charges were against you, how would that, the trajectory of that to your life, you could not be here where you're at today and a whole nother lifestyle.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think as whoever you are, I think it's so important. As a person of faith, one of my favorite verses actually talks about diligence. It's in Proverbs, and how important it is to be diligent as a person, and prudent, meaning like careful for your future and the decisions you make. And like, even when you're to not just know things on the surface, but actually like be knowledgeable. Like, I think many times I could speak for people that are listening, maybe that are of faith. I think there's always this kind of like, oh, God's going to save me. God's going to save me. And the reality is like faith without works is dead. And so as believers, or if you're not, whatever you believe in, there's no exception. Whoever you believe in, whatever God that is, there is a requirement that you have to play in order to activate that faith for whoever you serve, whatever higher being you believe in. And going back to this point, it's that, like, sometimes our upbringings or the people around us in our community, they're negligent in certain areas of life. It's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
They're not really like prudent or, cautious about finances, relationships, things that are important to know. Getting in trouble and not actually finding out, hey, let's do some research to find out if this is actually the whole case.
Yeah.
And they kind of like accept things for as they come. And that's called being reactive. And reactive people always end up in trouble. And so I think as an adult, without you even asking me to transition, I think I'm just saying as an adult, I'm very intentional. I try to be very intentional of not being a reactive person, because I've experienced that in my youth and in like my teenage years, being in community and growing up in communities that were very reactive. We wait until they cut our phone bills off. We wait until, the IRS comes after us.
Yeah.
We're waiting instead of, hey, I got a letter from the IRS and damn, that's a scary amount, but let me figure out a solution before they end up, taking money from my accounts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess you could say it's like whatever result comes to you, to look at it and then start figuring out ways to look at it, rather than I'm gonna put it to the side and just worry about it later. But later could be way more severe than right now trying to figure out what that one problem is.
Yeah. And so everything in my life, I'm very intentional. I tell my family this because of things that I've seen as a kid. I'm proactive with everything. Hey, I know this is coming up. And if it's coming up, cool. And if there's a problem in my family, I have a problem with someone, sometimes I am stubborn. I'm like, hey, I need a week to kind of get over it. But I know that I'm going to confront that. Hey, let's talk. Hey, I'm going to respect you. But I am going to tell you, hey, I think there's something here that's not working between us. How do we fix it? I'm going to respect you. But I am proactive to know that if things you don't sweep things under the rug and expect that they're going to get clean. You have to pick the rug up, sweep, and then you can clean the rug. And that applies to our finances, our relationships. When you are in trouble of some kind, like, oh, I don't have the finances. Well, I'm sorry, but we got to figure it out, like we all do. And goes kind of back to your podcast, man. It's all just that.
Yep, that's the decision.
Yeah.
I haven't said it yet, but bars. That was a bar right there.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Don't flatter me, man. I didn't intentionally.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people have trouble with this in high school, is finding your identity, because some people know what their identity is, but there's no way for them to I guess you don't know how to build your community in high school, because unless you're I don't know if this is right, but like you got the gothics, the people that like black music or they wear black makeup. You got the athletes, and some people are like, dude, I'm not athletic. And then the people that are smart get picked on because they're a nerd or whatnot. You're like, dude, we're supposed to all get straight A's. Like, why are these kids? So, did you ever find your identity in high school, or was it after, like, in college?
Even growing up, like, hey, my uncle at 12 was my best friend. My uncle owned like automotive centers. He owned like a number of different small businesses in the hood.
Okay.
In Camden, New Jersey, right? And his just thought process was so different from everyone around me. He owned real estate and was always thinking like, he was always like 5 steps ahead. If we were walking into a place, he already knew the outcome before we got there. Hey, sit here so you can look out there. And like, that was always his nature. Everything he did, he always thought. He used his brain. And to this day, like I kind of taught me, he said most of the people use only 10% of their brain.
Wow.
I intentionally try to use at least 70%. I don't even know how I do it, but I do it.
Okay.
And so that always stood with me, because it was a time in my life where I was kind of like lax. And I am relaxed, but I'm always trying to think. We sometimes get accustomed to just operating on autopilot. And my uncle, coasting. And so my uncle was that guy growing up that was always intentional, always like had huge visions and would bring them to life. And he was a guy that probably dropped out of like 7th grade. The most brilliant guy I've ever met to date. Like my professors in college probably can have their conversation with him and stay like, he knows every detail. You talk about fixing a wall and he's like, oh yeah, you need like a 2-ply. I'm not handy at all. You need like a 2x7 for like grand euro. I'm like, what? I don't know what that means, man.
Yeah.
And so growing up, my uncle was like my best friend. And I would give up going to like skating trips and stuff with friends to just be with him, watching him break apart homes, and say, I'm gonna knock down this kitchen. And he always found the right people and would make the most beautiful homes in the hood. And so he would always teach me everything. He would always tell me like, then you ask too many damn questions. And I also like that about you. You always asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so I was always like really inquisitive, and not knowing that like that kind of childhood would lead me to want to be an entrepreneur getting older, which that sounds glamorous. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But that was what I loved. And I think that's he had too much influence on my life that he told me, hey, go to school, because I didn't know what I was going to college for. If you've never seen it, there's a quote by Ralph Emerson, another one of my favorite quotes. A mind shaped by a new form can never return back to its own dimension. And so because I never saw anyone graduate college, my brother that graduated college lived in Puerto Rico, so I didn't grow up with him. I didn't know how to get financial aid. These aren't excuses, right? I think you must go out and find these people because they're there, especially now.
Yeah.
You don't have them, go on LinkedIn, right? Let's make this practical.
Yeah.
They're there waiting for you.
I love practical.
Yeah,
Instead of like talking about
let's make it practical.
Boom,
So
boom, boom.
if you don't have it, don't be like me. When I was young, I was very reactive. Hopefully it came. Oh, I can't. And I pondered more on like I spent more time complaining than actually finding solutions. And so if you want to build anything, you need to just be a solution-driven individual person, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this is happening. This is going to happen. What am I going to do? And that's what I'll say. There's no excuse for what I believed, but I did know growing up, hey, I never saw those things. So I told one time, like, I was kind of following everyone in my community in high school, and everyone was like, I'm not going to college. And I'm like, I'm not going to college either. I'm going to build like my uncle with $0, right?
Yeah.
So like, not that faith doesn't work, but there's an aspect of logic as well.
Yeah.
If you have no resources, go get it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, my uncle told me, hey, go to school and study accounting and become an accountant and become a CPA, and I'll invest in you to build a CPA firm in Pensacola, and I'll help you get clients. I'm like, that's easy. I'm there. Like, I'm gonna make money like you.
Yeah.
Count me in. I went to school, studied accounting and finance.
Where'd you go?
Rowan.
Okay.
And shout out to the
Rowan University.
Best bro, Rowan. Yeah. And I hated it. I started working in Philly when I came out, and I got fired. Okay. Like, I was like in a den working with no windows, and I'm like 19, and I'm like a wild dreamer, and they had me looking at a screen for 12 hours a day, trying to balance numbers, and that by like 9, we were supposed to leave at 5, and my stuff never balanced. So I was there till like 9 p.m. and people were like, wow. One day my boss called me and I was like, this is it. I know, please do me the favor. Like I want to do you a favor. Like, I'm probably making you lose a lot of money right now. And he's like the nicest guy. And he's like, hey, how do you feel about working here? And I was like, you tell me what you think. Like, my numbers don't balance. I'm an accountant,
Yeah.
And
can you say what company you work for?
No, I can't say.
Okay.
But
wait, let's backtrack a little. How'd you get that job? Was it just like applying to all accounting jobs, or you knew someone that knew someone? Yeah,
so I was living in New York. That's a whole nother story. Maybe I should say that really quick, because that kind of tells like who I am. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted to live. When I graduated from college, I wanted to live in Miami, LA, or New York. And I was like, man, we're the most ambitious people in the world. I want to go there. And my brother was like, me too, man. And so my brother and I have always been super close. We started doing research, and we were like, we're going to New York. We've always loved New York. So we went to New York, and we started connecting with different people. We would go each week because I went to this church out there, and I kind of built community. And we started getting like people were helping us find places, and they're like, guys like you guys just starting out at like college, you guys should move to like Brooklyn. And we're like, no. We like the Upper East Side. And they're like, you have no job. And I was like, but I have wild faith. And so I don't know, but like honestly, like the people who live on the Upper East Side are not you guys. And I was like, I'm going to live on the Upper East Side. You watch me. And my friends were like, this guy's like so naive. And my brother and I started looking at apartments, and they were like $2,000 for a studio. And I was making like nothing. And I was like, I don't know. I just have some savings, but we'll figure out. I'm going to get a job when I come here. And I was like, I don't know, bro. I'm still going to live here. And he's like, yeah, me too. And so we were like, if we live in this community, the way we're going to do is we're going to go to all the restaurants. We're going to get to know all the people in this community, because everyone that lives here is doing something great. And so like the first day we went to that neighborhood to explore it, we met like the VP of Columbia University. And I was like, and I was like, oh, she's pretty cool. She's a VP. She said, where do you live? And I was like, I'm going to live in this area. And then she's like, oh, nice. This is a great area. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to live in your building, but I'm going to live in this area. So all that to say, my brother and I, we went and we saw a studio, like 300 square feet.
Okay.
And it was like $2,000 a month. And we're like, I don't have that. But I was like, we do have a solution, bro. let's get your girlfriend and one of my friends, and let's make a co-working space during the day. And at night, that same room is going to become an apartment.
Wow.
And we're going to all live in one room. Don't do this. Please don't do this. But
you said 300 square feet?
Yeah, 300 square feet. But we lived in we ended up making that happen.
Okay.
And so during the day, we were living out of duffel bags and stuff, but we lived in the heart of Manhattan, and we were like, yo, we're living the dream. And I was the happiest. I was so happy in that space.
Nice.
I say that to say, do I recommend that? No. But sometimes on the way to your dream, my dream and my route has not been linear. I've made things happen because I'm creative. And creativity will get you to the outcome that you want. It just won't look the way that you want it to look. In New York, that's why I love New York so much, because, hey, my church is in a bar.
Wow.
My social club is in the second floor. I rent a second floor of an event space, and it's in a restaurant. And I keep mentioning, I don't know why I keep mentioning church, but essentially what I'm saying is nothing has to be, there is no model that we have to stick to. Sometimes we do, though.
Yeah.
And so what it looks like for you isn't what it has to look like for some other person. And so me moving to New York, I knew I wanted to live in this area. And that area actually changed my life in a lot of ways. Stripped me of knowing things that I know and taught me things I didn't know because of the people that I got to meet. And so I still lived in the Upper East Side next to $4 million apartments and $10 million apartments. But I lived in a 4th floor walk up and lived with 4 other people.
Wow. One thing you said is you know that you're creative. One thing I feel like people should do is find out what you're good at, because I'm not creative. You can see this room, you're like, yo, this is nice. This was just my idea. And it took 5 other people to be like, yo, this wall should be black. You should buy this sign, this light. And once you find those people that in your life that can bring up to life your ideas, that's when things start rolling and they'll go fast. Like this podcast, it was just an idea, and it took 5, 6 other people to make it roll. And now here we are having guests like you on the podcast where it's like,
I'd challenge that.
It's real.
I'd challenge that.
You would challenge it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd say you are creative.
Okay.
Because creativity isn't linear. It doesn't mean, I'm creative maybe the way I like to dress, maybe not. But creativity isn't like a one-dimensional term, right?
Okay.
Creativity means the same way you met Lamar,
okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I have this wild vision. I don't know how to bring it to life, but I just want to try something. And maybe you're open to other ideas to create something new. And that's also a sense of creativity. I know I have ideas. I know I want to do things, and I don't know how to bring them to life, but I know how to go and find the right people and give people the voice to speak. And so creativity just doesn't mean, hey, I'm good at painting pretty pictures. Creativity for me means I'm solution driven.
Wow.
And so if you say no, I'm coming through the back door. Everyone's going through the front door. I'm coming through the roof.
I appreciate that.
I'm going to climb that tree. I'm going to make a hole in the wall, the roof, and I'm coming down. I'm going to be in the house with you, but I'm not getting in that line.
Cool.
And so I think it seems like that's for you,
I never looked at it that way.
You've opened up your space to get other ideas that may be better than yours, but you're open to their creativity, so you get to tap into potential that you don't even know you have.
Yeah. So when you said, I guess the word, when I think of creativity, I think of the people actually doing the work, not the people with the ideas. But you putting in that perspective, I guess everybody in some way, in some form, is creative.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. So you said you and your brother needed 2 more people to get in this studio. What drove these 2 other individuals to say, yes, I like the idea, let's get this started?
I was hoping you didn't ask that.
Oh, for real? Okay, backtrack.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So the way things work in New York, if you don't know, sometimes they want 40 times a monthly rent or 80 times a monthly rent. And depending on the areas you live in, they're 80 times. And they're like, you need to make $175K. And I was like, sweetheart, my whole family doesn't make that together. So I was like, okay, well, they have some grants from college and they have some grants, but we can show the income. We have to then at least show 8 or 10 months.
Okay.
And so one was my brother's girlfriend. One was an ex of mine. She was a friend at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I think I can live with her. I've known her for a while and we're just friends. And maybe she has another boyfriend now. It's fine. And so we were just trying to think, again, being creative. No, that's not creative. It's just thinking, hey, there's things they say. You don't know someone until you live with them. till you travel with them, till money is involved, and until they're mad.
Wow.
And I thought, without knowing, I actually thought of that then. And I was like, hey, like, who are people that I can live with? They're clean, they're respectful. And those two other people came up. And so even though she was an ex of mine, I knew like just how she navigated. And I was like, I can live with her.
Wow.
And so if we're going to create this space, and my apartment is like an analogy that at that time for like everything in life, essentially, because creating a space like this, you get to create it. Who do you want in the room? What do you want the room to look like? Again, sometimes you're walking down the street, and this is real. In Upper East Side, you know, if you live there, people throw out really good things. And you're like, throwing that away? That's a brand new sofa. You know? And so you get to create your space. And I remember like, hey, I always had this vision for this space, and we had 10-foot ceiling. So my brother and I started building shelves up high.
Wow.
And we took this little space and we had like ladders. It was the most creative space where like everything was up high. And so people would come in, they wouldn't actually experience like feeling congested. And so that space is like a paradigm for my life to say, hey, like you give me a small space and I'm gonna make something out of it.
Wow.
And whatever you give me, there is going to be hope in that space. And I think that applies to your life and my life, like wherever you come from, whatever you're doing, you might come from a situation that's not ideal, and you can still use that to be so creative. If I can say, I dated someone who came from an extremely privileged background, something I've never was exposed to in my life. And this person's family is like one of the most powerful Black families in the country. And if you Google them, you would find them. For the sake of arguments or any kind of trouble I can get into, I won't disclose their name, but I'm happy to share more stories with anyone.
Okay.
And, you know, I learned from getting exposed to some of their communities that, you know, this idea that I always carried of wealthy people, there's rich and there's wealthy. There's also a difference. That, you know, all my experiences that I hated as a child made me the man that I am. So the things that I'm like, man, I never want to be like that person. And that person, to be honest, growing up was my dad, who I love dearly at this point. But, you know, some of his decisions weren't in alignment with what I believed a man should do. And I always said like, man, I wish that wasn't my dad. I wish like someone else was my father. I wish he was my dad. And, you know, because of that gift of not seeing what I wanted to see in my dad, it made me the man that I am today, and gave me the drive that I have today. And seeing the other side, dating someone who came from an extremely privileged background and seeing how their community operated, where they have access to everything that I ever dreamed of. But like that Eric Thomas thing says, you can't buy a drive at Walmart. And so because it comes so easy, you know, sometimes you miss the thing that's right in front of you because you take it for granted. And so I'm saying that to say that, back to my room analogy, you know, sometimes we just take things for granted. And I realized there, like, wow, like you can have all this access, and, you know, you can have, I never had a gym in my apartment, that little studio apartment. I keep using it as an analogy because it's everything to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, I used to work out in like YMCA when I first moved to New York because it was like this almost free thing. And we were like doing bench, lifting dumbbells with like homeless people.
Wow.
And it's like, I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And then like my friend, that person that I'm talking about, which is my girlfriend, lived in like the most fanciest building on the planet, and had like celebrities living in her building, and that gym was like, ever she invited me on, I'm going to the gym, and they never use it. And so I'm just saying to say like, just because someone comes from that privileged background doesn't mean they always, they're not able to sometimes even see the light and the opportunity in it. And I had a small apartment, but I valued it. And again, this isn't just for me, but I knew that was just part of my story. And I always tell myself, man, I can't wait to tell this story.
Yeah.
When like, I'm not using my cash advance to move here because I believe I'm supposed to live in New York. And when I have like, I'm able to pay other people's rent so they can live in dream places. And I just say that to say that start in your little apartment and look for the good in it. Look around and make sure you don't leave that room. And that's saying to your situation that you hate right now and say, what's the good thing in this? What is one good thing in this? What is one good thing in this? And if that means you have to lock yourself in a room until you find it, then lock yourself in the room until you find that one good thing and hold on to that for the rest of your life if you have to. Every time your mind says like, man, you're not privileged, don't say I'm not privileged. Or don't say, I wish, because the idea that you keep fostering in your mind is the idea that's going to play out larger than your voice, right? And so stick to the idea, hey, yes, this is my situation. And the good thing is that I got to experience this. So when I'm not here, I can do something from it. And so all that's to say, I think I'm prolonging your podcast.
Nah, you're good. This is going to be a good episode.
Prolonging your podcast.
This is going to be a good episode.
I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you have, but I care about how you speak, and I care about the narrative that you keep playing in your head. And so I know so many of my friends that had similar situations to me, but their narrative tells me that they're not ready. And I lived in China. Last story I'll say. Okay. Share. When I got fired from my accounting job that you guys all know about now, I ended up getting a job at the DOD, Department of Defense. Okay. And I went through all these FBI clearances, and my family was so happy and proud. And I'm like, that sounds like misery, honestly. But I just kept it in my head. And so I got this job in Northeast Philly, and I was working in a boatyard, and I was in the procurement section. And day one of the job, the manager comes in, he's like, this job here, people stay for 25 years. I was like, 25 years? Bro, I'm ready to leave. This is day one. Like, I put this on my life. Okay. I'm like, I do not want to work in that cubicle, and I don't want to be here. And I'm going to come back tomorrow because I got to figure things out. Yeah. And my parents, are really proud that I got this job. I don't know why. It sounds better than it is. And he's like, here's the GS scale. And by year 25, you're making this much money and these many benefits. And the 25 years that I've been here, only 3 people resigned. I was like, 3 people? I'm going to be the 4th one. So my best friend in college, his family owned businesses in China. And I was going through, I was like, I can't drive here every day. I hate this place. I know there's more to life than me being here. And my family was like, what, you going to quit that job? And I'm like, I'm not going to quit. I'm moving to China. Wow. And they're like, what the hell? You're crazy. You're a lunatic. And so I called my friend on my lunch break. I was looking through my phone book. I didn't have anyone to call. I went through my phone book. They let us out, obviously, for lunch. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you guys go for lunch. You have an hour. I was like, an hour? I need more than that. I need to get out of this place. Yeah. And I go looking for my phone book. And one of my mom's friends, his name was Charles Solomon. He worked for, I don't know if I can tell you where he worked before. He was a bodyguard for a congressman. Okay. And then he went and started a security company. And he started getting contracts years after for Beyonce and Jay-Z and a Super Bowl. And that was the only person I knew could give me some wisdom. And I never called this guy. And I was like, I'm going to call this guy. I need to ask him for advice fast. Nice. And I called him and I said, hey, Charles, this is Edgar. I'm really sorry I'm calling you. I'm shaking because I'm like, I got to figure something out. Yeah. Don't be irrational, please. Don't do that. But I'm on the phone with him and I'm like, hey, this is my situation. But I have a friend who's a really close friend of mine. His family invited me to go to China with him. And they own an investment firm and they are in real estate development and they do international business. And to be honest, that's really my dream. I've seen small business, but one day I want to be an international businessman. I want to do business around the world. And he says, actually, I'm his bodyguard. His name is Wen Wei. Wow. Wen Wei. He says, I'm Wen Wei's bodyguard. He hires me when he's going to certain places. And I said, you know Wen Wei? And he says, and honestly, and I said, but I just want to ask you for some advice because I don't know who to call. I got this opportunity. I went through the FBI clearance and I worked for the DOD. This is an internship that's going to turn into a full-time job as soon as I graduate college. The next 25 years of my life are written. And I said, but honestly, my heart is telling me I need to go and learn. They're not going to pay me a salary like I'm going to end up getting here, but I'm going to learn. And I always wanted to go to China. But I don't even know what that means, honestly, Charles. And he says, go to China. You'll never regret that. I say, you serious? Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And he's like, you'll never regret it. Validation. So I went back in and I said, hey, I thank you for this opportunity, but I can't come back tomorrow. And they're like, wow. What?
You put your 2 weeks in on that
No, I didn't put 2 weeks.
Okay.
Don't do that either, guys. That's irresponsible. But
so you just quit.
I came home and I was like, Mom, I'm going to China. And they're like, what? How? And I was, I'm going with Terry. I'm going with Terry and his family, and I'm going to learn business and watch. One day I'm going to do international. I'm going to do business around the world. You watch me.
Wow. So this is before the studio in Manhattan?
Yeah, right before.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the moment, sorry, I'm all over, but
No,
I'm going to bring it back.
Information, but
and so
we gonna get it together.
I moved to China, and all my friends thought it was like weird, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, you're not getting paid a salary, and you're doing all this work. And I was working, because in China, one thing I learned from it, hey, work is very different. They work from 8 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. to 12 midnight, 2 a.m. Wow. It's normal. We nap at work. That's why we have naps, like napping sections. We have chefs in the office. And because I love what I did so much, I never thought about working 9 to 5. I was doing the coolest work I've ever thought I could do. Wasn't getting paid, honestly, just stipends. They were just paying my rent and giving me food to eat and paying my flights. And I was like, that's all I need, honestly.
Yeah.
At this age, I just want to travel and learn and introduce me to government officials and stuff.
Nice.
And my family's like, hey, you making any money? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, yeah, not so bad. But in reality, I wasn't making anything.
Wow.
But I made so much money because of what it did in my mind today at 32. What I got exposed to changed my life forever and ever and ever. And I can never go back to that mindset that I once had. I always wanted to be in a Ferrari. And these are things that I kind of grew up in. When we honestly had many Ferraris, and he had homes all over China. And he would take me to go to get his oil change at the Ferrari dealer. And I would come in with this like H&M suit, and I'm trying to make it look like a Armani Exchange suit or like a Christian Dior suit. And I'm like, I'm the man, I'm wealthy. And I'm like, bro, you have nothing in your bank account.
Wow. But
I really started to see the things that I knew I wanted. And so once I started getting in them, I'm like, oh, this Ferrari really feels no different from a Honda Accord. It's just nicer. Like, people on the outside are like, yo, this is sick. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm in a Ferrari. And that exposure allowed me to realize, like, that's not really my goal, my dream. Like, I want to have those things as byproducts, but there's something that's going to drive me, that's going to keep my drive.
Yeah.
And I'm going after that. I can say today, I've seen the things that I always wanted, and I've experienced the things that I always wanted. And yes, I've been to countries, and I worked with government officials, and I worked in like $8 billion real estate development projects. And I can show you those pictures, and I can show you my experiences. And I've done some cool things, but those things have never driven me. Well, I thought they would. What drives me is seeing a person like you that's listening and say, wow, that guy just lit me up, or my life has changed and I have to go after mine. And when you come back and you just say, you said one little thing that changed my life, or maybe you inspired me in one little way, that is the essence of my being. And that's who I want to be. Yes, I'm 32 and I believe I'm 22. I'm more fit now. I believe, like, people are like, you turn 30, you're going to lose this and that. And I'm like, when I turn 30, I'm going to experience more of it. And so, like, this is fun. You're allowing me to talk a lot, but to end it here, we get to create our lives. Take the space that you're in, whether large or small, and make what you want out of it. I don't care what that person is the same space as you, and they told you how you need to fill it, because that's how they filled it at 30. You remind yourself, nah, like, that's what you think because that's what you saw. But I see and I create from what I see in my mind. And so all that's to say that create what you want to create out of your life.
So that leads you to this getting 4 people in this 300 square foot studio.
Not that linear. I came back and couldn't find a job because my resume didn't really make sense.
Okay.
And I had worked on $8 billion development projects in Guizhou, China. And Guizhou, China is the southwestern region of China. It's like no one really goes there.
Okay.
And like, to the point that I walk down the street, like, ni hao, ni hao. And they would take pictures with me because I looked strange. I was a guy with big lips in China. Like, okay. Come on, you know? And so they take pictures with me, and I was like a celebrity. I'm like, man, I'm the man here. And so all that to say, I came back and my resume looked amazing, but also it was some fluff in there.
Okay.
But I just couldn't find a job. So I was like, well, learn one thing. when he started his career, he's now like a very successful guy. He lived in a rural village that he took me to in a mountain and rural poverty, like pure poverty. And he used to carry 100-pound bag of medicine 7 hours a day to start his business. And I was like, I'm so spoiled and entitled. I don't think I'll walk for 30 minutes. So I'm like, what can I do? No one's hiring me. The only thing I know how to do is everything I did in China. And I was helping build their US subsidiary in the Southwestern region, bring in relationships like investors from different parts of the world to see the projects and invest in them. I was like, well, one thing I do know is I can do some marketing. I'm just going to start building some Wix sites and going to every single business on the Upper East Side and Upper West Side until I get some clients. And I came to New Jersey as well. And I was like, even if they pay me $100 a month, I'm learning. That's all. I just want to learn. And from there, 7 years later, I built a business called Ago that builds communities for other brands.
How you spell that?
AHGO.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And from there, like life has played its trajectory. And, now that's how Lifted's come about. It's a community that the same service offerings we were offering other people, we end up offering ourselves. Because one day me feeling lonely, wanting community. But I was like, I have some of these skills.
Cool.
So
let's talk about Ago a little bit more. So what's the
premise?
Yeah.
So started out of necessity.
Okay.
Just need to fund my life. And we were providing marketing services, social media, website services, SEO, basic marketing stuff to small businesses in the community. Quick playbook for those that want to build things. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to be all in always in the beginning. Sometimes you don't have the resources to do so. You can start by taking classes, gaining skills, and build while you work. Let your job pay for you. If you don't have an investor, let your job be your investor so you can build things. And so I started off just trying to survive. And I spent too much time trying to survive on my own out of ego-driven motives to say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. And honestly, I was just unemployed.
Yeah. Thanks for the authenticity.
Unemployed. And so why? Because every time I gained the contract, I had to use the same resources to fund my life. So I wasn't injecting any capital back into the business. So it's just like a child. I always say this. If you think of a business as an infant, if you keep taking the child's milk or food when it needs to eat, you're going to kill the baby, respectfully. And so a business is no different. If you want a business to grow, you need to inject capital into it until it's able to be self-sustainable. Then you can fund yourself by taking, a disbursement. But if you keep taking from the business, it's also biblical. We won't get into that. You're not allowing the baby to grow healthy. And I did that. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. No, good sir, you were unemployed. And so you allow the business to breathe and invest in it and keep growing. And you work a job that's able to fund it so that you can allow the resources you can invest it in other ways to do more and more. So I spent too much time providing those services and trying to survive for myself for something that no one cared about, my title. And it's just like when people say, I'm the CEO, and I'm like, you're a CEO of nothing right now, right? I'm glad you have the vision, but that means nothing. What have you produced, And so to your point, then over the years, I started getting a little larger contracts and started working with a consortium of different like creatives. And so then I started getting contracts in like larger contracts in like hospitality. And then like the Web3 boom came and I started getting like those Web3 clients for community. That was like the essence of community. And then real companies started realizing, hey, community building is the future of marketing, regardless of what company you're in. That's why Louis Vuitton has the Instagram group they have, and they have like the Discord channels, because if you can own your audience, it's cheaper, there's longevity, and you keep their attention. And so the future of brand building is community building. So we started like working with SaaS-based brands. And now now what I've done recently, put more of my focus into Lifted, is like the past year, I had different like people working with me. like had one full-time person and the rest were like creative consortium of creatives who are freelancers. And I just outsource all my contracts and they just now pay me a retainer so I can focus on Lifted. What does that mean? Why did I do that? Because my time was too invested. The agency world is very consuming and it's very exhausting. And I knew that like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not what I want to do. And so that money that I get now, again, be creative, is not money that pays my life. This is me being fully transparent.
Thank you.
These resources, I've figured out, okay, how do I fund Lifted without having to use my own resources? And so the consultants that I've given our contracts to, they pay me a small percentage and that money goes to funding Lifted so we can build it up. And so nothing has to be black and white. I also lead marketing and community for a tech company. And it just, that was important for me to work remote, figure out my own hours. And it allows me to do that so I can invest in these things that I really believe I'm building. And so all that to say, get creative with your life.
Cool. A couple questions, you sharing your experiences. So starting the marketing and stuff, you said do the training. Let's say someone doesn't have the funds to, I guess, pay for these trainings. Where do you recommend these future marketers go?
Yeah, so you do have the funds.
Okay.
Because it's some way or another, you're probably buying sneakers or you're probably going out to that bar because your friends are there and you're spending $10 there maybe. That's probably a cheap amount. Maybe you're spending more.
Yeah.
But you are spending. And so depends. And if you're able to somehow, some way, I always find that people that don't have jobs have better lives than me. Respectfully.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, hey, damn, you were at that club last week. Okay, I'm not judging you. I've done that too. But nowadays you can find classes for $10 online. And money is actually a tool. And once you learn how to invest it, you're not afraid to waste it. You don't waste it. You're afraid to waste it. You're afraid to waste it, but you're not afraid to use it. And so, hey, I can go on with life experiences. I purchased this class. Don't do this. I purchased this class to help me build tech infrastructure. And I'm going to go back to that question.
Okay.
And I spent $25,000 on it.
It's not a little number, Edgar.
Yeah, and I won't say a name because I had to get an attorney involved.
Oh, okay.
And like a friend had to help me get out of this. And I'm not saying this again, this flex. I'm saying this for two reasons, and I'll tell you why. It was a platform that was supposed to help me build tech infrastructure to build a better sales funnel and to help like build like a more robust sales system, right? With like a CRM and these kinds of things. And honestly, like I would never in my life buy anything from an ad because I'm like, I would never spend that. Like that's crazy. I can do that myself.
Yeah.
And they proved themselves. They had an amazing welcoming platform. They had to the point, and this is to show you details also important, to the point that the moment they onboarded someone, automation, talking practical, use Zapier.com. It's an amazing platform. If you're building anything and you're limited in resources, use Zapier.com. It allows you to build automation in anything that you do. So for instance, just a decision.
Okay.
I leave this podcast. We want to get an email to all our members. What we'll do is, thank you so much for listening to our last podcast. Send an automation at the moment this gets uploaded to YouTube. It zaps Zapier to let them know, hey, a video has been uploaded to YouTube. Send that to all our members. So you can create a bunch of automations.
Lamar, are you catching this?
So I paid this money because I wanted to learn automations.
Okay.
And this guy I know is really good at it, and he is really good at it. And what they're offering is really good. The only problem was one of his employees wanted to quit. And so he was like quiet quitting, which just means he's working from home, working on Zoom, and really trying to build his own project and not dedicating enough resources to building what he was hired to do.
Yeah.
And so that was my mentor, advisor. And that guy was just like ripping me off. I caught him on chat GPTing everything I told him to do.
Wow.
And so I was like, did you just chat GPT that? Like, I just paid all this money for your cheese. Like, Oh, no, I was just reviewing it. Next thing you know, he took ads from another community and put our name on it. And so I caught these things. I came to their team. They didn't do anything. They just kept like trying to finesse me in some way. Long story short, I ended up losing all of my money. I got $5,000 back. And I had to get a lawyer involved. So, you lose money.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that to say that, yes, you can say, oh, you have a job and you have a business and you're doing these things easy for you. And I was stressed out. I was like, damn, you know what I could do with $20,000?
Heck yeah.
And I'm going to bring this back to your question. I remember my uncle that week, he had someone come in and steal $16,000 worth of tires. Wow. And he was like, it's all good. I'm going to make it back double. And I was like, oh my, bro, like when? Like in a year? He's like, no, in like 2 weeks. I'm like, wow. So I heard that and I was, after my situation, I'm like, what does it feel like? I don't even feel it, honestly. I don't know. I mean, you feel it,
yeah,
but it's all here. Like losing that money. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work to make sure I triple that amount.
Wow.
In less than 6 months. And did it happen? It didn't really happen. But I'm saying that to say to you, your point, like, what if someone doesn't have the resources? Money is just a tool. Mm. And so when you're not afraid to invest money, I continue to invest my money. How do I learn the things I learn? I invest so much in my education. I'm part of communities. How did I learn how to like trade? I spent a lot of money learning how to trade. I've invested, most of my money that I've invested in has been in classes. I've invested over $150,000 in education, not academic education. I'm always taking classes. And so what that makes me is valuable when I walk into a room, when I'm in a position, my skills are in demand. So, people say, I'm doing Amazon FBA. That's great. Do it. You might make a lot of money. But you want to create a moat for yourself. And so sometimes that thing that you're saying, where do you get the money from, is the question shouldn't be, how do I get the money now? It's how do I create a moat for myself in the future? And if you're really serious about it, you might borrow that money from your cousin that's a drug dealer. You might borrow that money from your dad that's a cop. You might say, Dad, I need this investment because, or a lawyer, whoever that person in your life is, to say, hey, I need $500, but I need to learn this skill. When I learn this skill, I will pay you back with interest in 1 year. And money is, you get creative. Again, this is all about creativity. Hey, I'm going to pay you back 3% by the end of this year. Cheaper than the bank is going to charge you. But that person, if they have $500, call me. I'll give you $500, you give me 3%. And I know you're a person that's actually going to do what you say you're going to do. I might invest in you. I'd be happy to. And so it's how creative can you get? You have the money, the same way your friends are going to that restaurant anyway. They're going to that bar.
Yep.
So, yo, let me borrow that $500. I need to learn the skill. Find a skill that creates a moat for you. A moat meaning that you kind of have a competitive advantage. Invest your money and time into that. Learn it. And then, and do the same for someone else. And so you do have the money. You just have to figure out how to find it. We all have it. You might have to put it on a credit card. You have the money. Do it. Go for it. Be mindful of every dollar where you spend your dollar when you're in your building phases. It matters.
Cool. I'm glad you're sharing everything and talking about building communities, and it led you up to building Lifted right now. What's Lifted stand for? And if you want to talk about how it started and then the goals with Lifted you see in the future.
Talk about space. Keep going back to my creative space, my little apartment on 72 West 88th Street on the Upper East Side. I had a vision of where I wanted to live and how I wanted my life to look. And I'm living in that vision right now. Mm. Right? I'm not a billionaire. I thought I'd be a billionaire at 30. I'm not even a millionaire. But I'm not doing bad. And I'm not struggling. And something that girl that I dated that I told you about once told me, when she told me, you have a small town mentality. And I used to give, I'm like, I never have a small town mentality. You have a small, I'm like, you don't. Like, you're really smart and exposed. She always told me, like, you look at life from a small perspective. I used to say, man, I was praying to God, like, God, please help me pay my rent. Help me to get out of this situation. Help me. And she's like, when are you going to start praying that God allows you to do those things for other people? When you start praying that for other people, you won't be in that situation anymore. And one day, hey, I was almost late on my rent. And I was like, God, I can't thank you that I'm able to pay someone else's rent, God. Thank you that I'm in a position where I can lend money and never borrow it. Thank you that I'm in a space that right now, today, it may look like it's dark for me, but thank you that I'm the one that's funding businesses and building things for people. The things that I'm asking you for, thank you that I already see them happening for other people. And so Lifted came out of this idea that during the pandemic, I was feeling kind of lonely. And I just knew I had some skills in building other people's communities. And I started a Clubhouse room. And on Clubhouse, it was me and my co-founder. My co-founder at the time, which that's a whole nother story. When I broke up with this person told me, hey, they were doing work in South Africa. They exposed me to South Africa. And I realized I ended up doing another resource. If you want to learn how to public speak a bit, I'm not saying I'm great at it. I'm still working at it. Toastmasters. Again, I wanted to learn how to public speak. So I said, okay, you want to learn how to public speak, Edgar? Then you got to find a way. So there's this community, this organization that you pay monthly dues and you get to learn how to public speak. They put you on it's a laboratory for people that want to speak. You get up there and you just speak on different topics, right? And I started doing that. I would go every week and I started meeting people and they're like, hey, so what does a nacho look like? And I'm like, you have to answer the question. And you're practicing. It's a laboratory. That space had me do a research. I had to do a paper on poverty because I was kind of passionate, like, what does poverty mean? So I did some research on poverty. And I started realizing that the similarities of poverty in the United States and people that grow up in inner cities is really no different than poverty in countries like South Africa and around the world. Why? Because poverty has the same outcome, typically, like psychologically. And on average, at the time, someone living in the United States that grew up in poverty typically makes about 40K per year. That was like the average at the time, was like 7 years ago. And someone in South Africa, the equivalent of that, they were making something like that growing up in the rural community. So the outcomes are quite similar. Mm-hmm. And speaking and being involved, they built the Leadership Academy. And so I was quite active in like meeting the students and like interviewing them. And these are like the most brilliant kids that don't take things for granted. Yeah. And from that, I came back and, I started, when I went, my friend lived in South Africa and he told me, hey, Edgar, I know you're building a startup. I want you to come and speak in South Africa. So I went to South Africa to speak, ended up meeting my co-founder at the time. My co-founder and I, he lived in Cape Town. I lived in New York. And we created a solution that like would allow us to hire and train people in South Africa, leveraging the South African government. And so we would train them and then send them to build on their own. They would work for us. And then after a few months, they could go off. It didn't really work because people leave you and it's not that sustainable. Yeah. And they can go off and boost the local economy by creating jobs. So Zalisa is his name. Him and I created a Clubhouse channel. That Clubhouse channel was just to connect with other people who were people of faith, but wanted to be the best in everything they did. Not just read the Bible and not just be people that are limited, but to experience all of God's creation. Because I believe God created money. I believe he created technology. I believe he created everything. And I believe that he wants us to be the epicenter of creativity. Just the church has placed limitations on what people do and how they live. And people have conformed to religion and not the idea of God. And so I wanted to create a space where I could just meet people who carried that mindset, and that we could be open about our faith and pray together, but believe that like we are the leaders of the world in every industry and every facet. And so we just hosted a space every single day, had no intention of creating anything out of it. And then people from different parts of the world, we had like 1,100 members, and they were from all over the world. Wow. And so they were like, hey, let's host events in different cities. And I'm like, that'd be really cool. Let's host some cities. So we started hosting in London. We started hosting in California and Texas, in South Africa. So we started hosting events, and people were like, man, this is the community I dream of having. And I was like, it's a community I dream of having. Like, this is what I want to do. So all that to say, it stemmed from creating a solution for people. That person started with me, and then starting to realize, asking people what they wanted. And eventually we started creating like small chapters, playbook point, anyone building anything. Sometimes we want scale. When you want scale without actually foundation, the scale isn't able to sustain. So we started building local chapters in different cities. And I was the man. I'm like, man, I got chapters all over. This is starting to grow. And then I went to an event, and we had like multi-level marketing people trying to sell me. And I'm like, I would never invite you to my experience, respectfully. Like, you're trying to sell me on Amway. Not, if you're part of Amway, respectfully, I love that. Love that for you. But that's not, I don't want you to have to push me to be an entrepreneur. I want an ecosystem of investors, of entrepreneurs, of lawyers, of doctors, of marketing folks, because an ecosystem is how a startup environment flourishes. And so I was like, no, let's bring it back. We're going to New York City, and we're going to start building only New York City. And so a year ago, after 1 year of doing it on Clubhouse and virtually, and then 1 year of going around and experiencing a lot of different places and hosting experiences in different places, this year we launched in New York. And essentially the essence of Lifted is to create a social club. I was a part of many social clubs. I went to the Soho houses. I've been to, parlor social clubs. For those that don't know, if you live in a big city, these clubs are like the creative elite social clubs, but they felt shallow. And I wanted to create a space that was a social club where people could come and actually get inspired and grow, but not come here to be distracted, but to come here to grow. And essentially, that's what Lifted is in a mouthful. Lifted is a social club for people to come, get inspired, to grow, and create impact in their communities by coming together. So that's it.
Cool. I can say you're an expert on building communities. And earlier in the episode, we talked about practical things. So what's, the practical route right now if someone wanted to build their own community?
For those that don't know, they say the next $1 billion business is going to be built by one man. And that's because of AI agents, which is the future of technology, right? And to source this isn't my information. This comes from Jensen Huang, and he is the founder of NVIDIA, the creator of chips that pretty much power AI, right? And so, right now is a time where like every Sunday from 7 to 8, typically when I'm home, I'm not home right now, but I will. I always take 1 hour a week just to explore different AI tools, because you should know what's happening and how to leverage productivity tools that align with what you're building. So one tool that I mentioned earlier that's actually absolutely game-changing is Zapier. You can connect it to almost any platform, and it automates a lot of things for you. So 1, automation, right? 2, AI agents. Start learning about different AI agents that can help you in what you're doing, right? The future of sales, they say a lot of the nuanced processes of sales will be far removed from people. We won't need people anymore. And so I can tell you right now that you should be leveraging these things. Use tools like Clearstream.io, whether you're building a makeup brand, a beauty brand, a brand in fashion, whether you're building even an automotive center. The brand that's going to have competitive advantage of the future is a brand that can build a community, because you're able to keep the attention of your people. And so regardless of what industry, and name an industry, and I will tell you, you need a community. It doesn't look the same. And so host maybe local meetups, or use, again, Clearstream.io is a text platform that you can actually automate, and you can create text sequences and email sequences that automate. So someone subscribes on your website. You can create a Zapier that once they subscribe on MailChimp, which is an email platform, then it'll zap them to Clearstream and saying, hey, here's 10% off. I'm making this up. You kind of choose what you wanted it to say. And then we can also take that information and put that into like a database on Google Docs, and it can do it all for you. And then you can go ahead and sky's the limit. But these tools are super helpful. I encourage you to use them. And then I would say, obviously everyone says this, but leverage data and being creative. Be creative, but also marketing now is an art and a science. And so the art of creative direction is creating content, but also gathering data is how you create sustainability for what you're creating. And so make sure you're also leveraging the information. Use tools like socialblade.com. It's basic information, but you can see the growth. You can also see, you can get Hootsuite as well. These are tools that allow you to see, hey, this is performing well. Let's do more of this. Don't just be creative. You're losing opportunities and leaving them on the table. So the future of a marketer is strategy and creative. And eventually we will be storytellers. AI will be the creator through video models like Stability AI and Luma AI. These are tools that allow you we're already seeing virtual productions are being created through these tools. So, leverage these tools as well and give them a try. If you're not interested, still give them a try because they can ease your workflow and simplify what you're doing right now. Maybe some B-roll. Maybe you don't have the time to go. You live in a place where you don't have access to B-roll. Go get good at text prompts. And so all that to say, these are tools you need to know because AI isn't going to replace people. People that use AI will replace those that don't.
Wow.
In the next 2 years.
Well, Edgar, this was a lot of information that I appreciate you for sharing, taking out time of your busy day. If someone would reach out to you about anything we talked about, how could they reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me on my Instagram, EDGARIRIZAR1, or follow us, Lifted. We are LFTD on Instagram. And man, I'm happy to connect with you. Just if you want to get involved with us, just send me a quick message on there. Say this is for Edgar. Listen to the podcast, Just the Decisions podcast, and ask away. Or even maybe you'll get invited to one of our experiences for sure to experience what we're doing.
Sounds good. I'm excited to use this for the decision maker community and how big we could grow it. Thank you again. You have a good one.
Thank you, man. Just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be here. This was cool, man.